Disappearance, a sea of music, masks, and secrets. But one story went too far and vanished into the night. This is the disappearance on Bourbon Street. New Orleans. A city of sound and shadow. Jazz floats from the bars of the French Quarter, laughter spills into the streets, and neon paints every surface in colors too bright to be real. But in a city where music never dies, silence carries its own weight. Behind the noise, there are whispers, stories no one wants to tell, names no one wants to repeat, debts no one dares to collect. On the night of March 3, 2021, that silence claimed another voice. Her name was Clara Devine. She was 36 years old, a journalist known for her sharp pen and sharper instincts, the kind of reporter who didn't just follow stories, she pulled them out of the dirt and forced people to see them. Clara didn't write about parades or festivals. She wrote about corruption, money moving in backrooms, and men whose names never made the papers but whose hands were in every pocket in the city. Her last investigation had a name scribbled across every page of her notes, the Bayou Syndicate. No one knew exactly who they were, whether it was a gang, a network of businessmen, or something in between, but the idea of them lingered. People spoke of them the way you talk about storms on the horizon. You don't need to see it to know it's coming. And Clara Devine had chosen to step directly into its path. That night, the French Quarter still pulsed with leftover energy from Mardi Gras. Beads hung from balconies like forgotten trophies. The pavement gleamed wet under light rain, catching reflections from buzzing neon signs. Tourists had thinned, but the city wasn't asleep. It never was. Clara was last seen leaving the St. Vincent's Jazz Club just past midnight. She walked out alone, notebook under her arm, hood pulled over her head. A camera caught her stepping into the alley beside the club, phone pressed to her ear. She turned once, glanced over her shoulder, and then disappeared into the shadows. That was the last image anyone ever had of her alive. When she didn't come home, her absence was noticed quickly. Her car was found the next morning, parked carefully on St. Philip Street. Inside sat her bag, her wallet, her press badge, everything but her phone. To most, it looked like another case of someone lost to the night. To the New Orleans Police Department, it looked like something darker. And for Detective Naomi LeBlanc, it was more than just another case file. It was a line in the sand. Naomi LeBlanc wasn't new to this city. She was born here, raised in Treme, and had spent over 20 years walking crime scenes from one end of New Orleans to the other. She'd seen it all: murders in alleys, overdoses under bridges, bodies fished out of the Mississippi. But something about Clara's file felt different. Heavy. Urgent. Dangerous. When she pinned Clara's photograph to the corkboard above her desk, she muttered words that would echo throughout the investigation: journalists don't just vanish. They get silenced. The search began with Clara's Bywater apartment. It was neat, obsessively so. No sign of a struggle, no forced entry, no overturned furniture. But her desk told another story. Pages of notes, unfinished drafts, arrows scrawled from name to name. Businesses connected like a spider's web, bars and restaurants that served as more than just watering holes. At the center of the page, circled in thick red ink, were two words: Bayou Syndicate. Among the papers was something stranger, a scrap of paper, edges blackened, as if someone had tried to burn it. Only fragments of sentences remained, but they were enough to draw a chill. They know what happened, warehouse, and don't trust anyone. The implication was clear. Clara wasn't just investigating corruption. She was warning herself, or someone else, that she had uncovered something too dangerous. When LeBlanc began asking questions, she found the city shutting down around her. Bartenders swore they hadn't seen Clara that night, though cameras showed otherwise. Neighbors claimed not to know her. Witnesses recanted or refused to speak. Even other journalists avoided her name in print. New Orleans is a place where silence is a form of currency, and when it came to Clara Devine, everyone had already been paid. But silence has its own language, and LeBlanc knew how to read it. Every door that closed, every voice that claimed ignorance, pointed her closer to the truth. The syndicate was real, and Clara had dug too deep. A week into the investigation, LeBlanc returned to the alley beside the jazz club, retracing Clara's last known steps. The rain still smelled of beer and neon, and the same street lamp flickered overhead. That's when she noticed it, faint, nearly washed away, but still there on the brick wall. A chalk marking, a fleur-de-lis, crossed with an X. It wasn't gang graffiti. It wasn't a prank. She had seen it before, years ago, connected to a case that went cold before it ever saw daylight. Back then, it was dismissed as coincidence. But here, now, it was a signature. A message. And it was left exactly where Clara disappeared. LeBlanc stood there in the rain, staring at the mark, cigarette smoke curling into the night. In her gut, she knew, Clara hadn't just disappeared. She'd been taken. And whoever had taken her wanted the city to know whose hand it was. The Mississippi River carried secrets like it carried silt, slowly, endlessly, swallowing them whole. LeBlanc thought about that as she looked out across the quarter, the storm pressing in overhead. For years, she'd heard whispers of the Bayou Syndicate, of debts settled in back alleys and bodies dumped where no one would find them. Clara had been chasing those whispers. Now she had become one. Back at the precinct, LeBlanc's board filled with notes, photographs, and red string. Clara's face stared back at her, pinned above the words Bayou Syndicate scrawled in bold letters. A map of bars and warehouses connected with thumbtacks. A burned scrap of paper in an evidence bag. And in the center of it all, that chalk fleur-de-lis. The longer she stared, the more the pieces began to form a picture. Clara hadn't just stumbled into danger. She had uncovered something too big to publish. And for that, the city itself had swallowed her. By dawn, the storm broke over New Orleans. Rain pounded the streets, washing neon colors into rivers along the pavement. Lightning split the sky above the quarter, illuminating rooftops and alleyways for brief, blinding moments. Inside the precinct, Naomi LeBlanc lit another cigarette and leaned back in her chair. The case of Clara Devine wasn't going away. It wasn't another forgotten disappearance. It was a warning. And somewhere in the city, someone was making sure that warning was heard. In New Orleans, music never stops, but even the loudest jazz can't drown the whispers. And that night, as the storm rattled her office windows, Detective Naomi LeBlanc swore she heard the city speaking back. Low. Cold. Certain. This is only the beginning. The Mississippi doesn't forget. Its waters have carried the city's sins for centuries, hiding them in its depths, sweeping them downriver. For New Orleans detectives, the river has always been less of a boundary and more of a grave. On March 17, 2021, 2 weeks after Clara Devine vanished, Detective Naomi LeBlanc followed a lead that pulled her toward the water. An anonymous tip, left on her desk without a name, a number, or a trace. Just a piece of paper with an address scrawled in black ink, Dockside Warehouse, 432 Algiers Point. It was late when she arrived. The building loomed against the night sky, its windows shattered, its bricks painted with the scars of decades. Graffiti clung to its walls, but one mark stood out, spray-painted in dripping red, the same symbol she'd found in the alley, a fleur-de-lis crossed with an X. LeBlanc pushed inside. Her flashlight cut through the damp air, beams catching broken bottles and water stains on the concrete floor. The silence was thick, broken only by the drip of water leaking from the roof. And then, in the far corner, the light found something. Taped to a wooden beam was Clara's press badge. Below it, pinned to the wall with rusted nails, a single Polaroid photograph. The image was grainy, but the subject was unmistakable, Clara Devine. Alive. Bound to a chair. Her eyes wide, fierce, unbroken even through the blur. On the back of the photo, one word scrawled in thick black ink, silence. LeBlanc lowered the photo into an evidence bag, her pulse steady but heavy. It wasn't proof of life, it was proof of power. Someone wanted her to know Clara had been here. Someone wanted her to feel the weight of her own helplessness. And someone wanted her to back off. Back at the precinct, the board filled with new connections. Clara's face. The Bayou Syndicate. The chalk mark. Now, the Polaroid. The picture of a journalist who had stared too long into the abyss and been swallowed whole. Every thread tied back to the same shadow, the syndicate that seemed to own the silence of the city. The storm outside battered the precinct windows, rain streaking the glass as thunder rolled across the skyline. LeBlanc sat in the glow of her desk lamp, smoke curling from a cigarette between her fingers. She stared at the board, at Clara's determined eyes staring back from the Polaroid. It was no longer just a case. It was a message. The syndicate had revealed itself, not through faces, not through names, but through symbols and shadows. And if Clara was still alive, she was living proof that the syndicate wasn't untouchable. The detective leaned forward, speaking to no one but the smoke-filled air. Journalists don't just vanish. And if she's alive, she's waiting for us to bring her back. Outside, lightning tore across the sky, flooding the city in white light for a heartbeat before plunging it back into darkness. And in that darkness, New Orleans whispered again. This is only the beginning.